Thank you for inviting me to come along. It's wonderful that as a democratic country we can hear different voices and different opinions, and I'm delighted to be here, so thank you. So my name's Kate Mason and I'm running for the Informed Medical Options Party. I've been in the running for 6 weeks, so I am going to read a little bit just because of getting my bearings. But the Informed Medical Options Party stands for Truth, Transparency and Accountability in Politics. I have a long career background in the welfare industry. I worked for many years in domestic violence and education for young women and children and families, and in my later career I worked in community development as a community development specialist. So community development is about what I would imagine that you have here, where you work as a community together and you stand for things that are important to you. And as a community development specialist, I worked where I fostered that and helped foster that for communities, because communities do have their own sense of identity and what's important for them and their families. I decided to run due to my concerns regarding the direction our country is taking and the world. I was personally affected, like many others, by the vaccine mandates, and I was disturbed for a number of reasons, which I am happy to be able to have a chance to talk about in a bigger format. So one of the reasons I was concerned, I felt like it was government overreach regarding lockdowns and their effects on the vulnerable cohorts within our community, and the lack of risk assessment conducted to any damage caused. I was disturbed by the rhetoric and division created intentionally through government and media and in our community, and I was disturbed by the fear-mongering and the lack of transparency regarding why COVID-19 measures were used, and again why they have been now relaxed. I was concerned regarding widespread usage of a conditionally approved vaccine which wasn't independently tested by the Therapeutic Goods Association, particularly used in healthy children who are at negligible risk of severe illness or death from COVID. I'm concerned regarding global bodies and corporations who profit from decisions being made, increasingly ruling every aspect of our lives, and this is why I am entering the political arena. The United Nations, which Australia is a member of, formed a strategic alliance with the World Economic Forum in 2019. The World Economic Forum has over 500 global corporations as stakeholders. This alliance has ushered in stakeholder capitalism, and they are committed to the rollout of the 2013-17 goals, United Nations. One of the 17 goals, and this is just one example of why I'm concerned, is Feed the World, which I am completely behind. The UN held a food summit in 2021, and one of the invitees, the International Panel on Sustainable Food Systems, withdrew, stating in part that the direction being taken by the United Nations threatens to bring in a new era of corporate-led multi-stakeholderism. And I'm additionally concerned that the Feed the World is GMO. The WHO is an arm of the United Nations. The WHO is currently in the process of expanding their pandemic treaty powers, which will mean even more a global one-size-fits-all medical model rolled out to the whole world. I am standing for the IMOP party because I believe in community, and that communities' voices must be heard and felt within government. I'm concerned we will no longer have this with the direction these treaties and memberships are taking us. I'm concerned that our world is increasingly commodified and profit-driven, where every aspect is seen as money-making and increasingly control endeavour over our bodies, our environment and our animals. So IMOP stands for Truth, Transparency and Accountability. We stand for health choices with medicine. You decide. You can have access to many different health modalities, including traditional Indigenous medicine for Indigenous people. We will repeal any vaccination mandates and instead focus on creating healthy food, healthy animals and healthy environments. We promote organic farming and regenerative agriculture to bring back the richness and nutrition back into our soil, so we build healthy bodies which flow then into healthy minds. We end all cruel animal practices and scrutinise pharmaceutical use in animal industries and their subsequent effects in our own bodies and in the environment. We promote non-GMO food, There are many concerns related to GMOs and their effect on biodiversity, soil, health, animal welfare and safety for humans and animals alike. We are concerned for the over-medicalisation of the mental health industry. We believe that human suffering needs to be rigorously attended to. The WHO itself said 25% of the world is now suffering from mental health concerns due to COVID measures. This needs to be rigorously explored and not become an antidepressant push. We deeply respect and acknowledge our Indigenous peoples and will work on any issues brought to our attention through advice and discussion with the cultural elders and community. We support small business and will develop policies for less regulation and more profits. We believe in community banks and cash and to limit foreign ownership of land, water and business. And we will scrutinise any negative legislative impact of our membership of the United Nations. So we want every conflict of interest noted within our government leaders and bodies. We want the ties between the people and the bodies they serve to be understood, and for the Australian people to understand that without having to become a detective to find out information. We want a Bill of Rights that protects our concerns, what people can use when they are concerned their democratic and human rights are being disregarded and abused. I am standing as a woman who is concerned for our children and our future generations. I am not a career politician. I, like many others, have lost trust in our legacy parties and lost trust that they're truly representing us and are accountable to us. Normal Australians concerned for our children, our families and our communities and wanting to look after and care for this beautiful planet. So I will make my decisions based on the principles, the IMOP principles of truth, transparency and accountability. IMOP's not going to call me a party traitor if I have a matter. We are allowed to have our own conscience votes. We are not tied to a particular party except for those value systems of truth, transparency and accountability within politics. So I will stand and I will represent you. I will not be representing global interests and global profiting. So that is my speech. That is what I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much for addressing us this afternoon, and I appreciate the fact you've been employed in the community. I'd like you to identify 3 immediate needs in our electorate and how you will rectify and actually deliver services to those 3 needs.
If I get in as a part, I'd be supporting everything that comes into how people can live in their own communities and not, well, I guess I'd say that no foreign ownership of our land and our houses, that we need to get ownership back into our communities. So that's what.
Thanks, Kate. Some of what you said actually made sense. Truth, accountability, trust, protection of the environment. But how can you possibly achieve that by reducing regulation? Regulations are in place to protect our environment, to ensure that we've got healthy and safe workplaces. How can it possibly be consistent with the deregulation and to still achieve those stated aims?
With reducing regulation in small business?
Well, no, regulation is, in small business, in any facet of society. Regulation is there to ensure that we've got environmental protections in place around pollution control, to keep our air and our water clean, our workplaces safe. Regulation is a critical component for small and large business to actually achieve that trust, accountability and transparency. So I'm just really quite perplexed at how you can hope to achieve these measures and reduce those regulations which are in place to ensure that we do have safe and healthy.
So I was saying that about small business, reduce regulation around small business. So
small business is subjected to these regulations around environmental protections and safe workplaces. So what regulation for small businesses are you actually talking about?
So with small business, I'm talking about people working in their community and being able to get small businesses up and going. So I do believe, and I'm not a small business person, but I do believe there's a lot of regulation and excessive taxes and excessive hoops to go through, so making that simpler.
Well, look, both you and the Greens candidate have mentioned, and maybe some other candidates have mentioned, housing, more housing. Now, it's very simple. If we're going to have more housing, we either need to go out and cover more land, or we need to go up. And there obviously has to be, in some cases, you have to choose where you're going up and choose where you're going out. But what's the response? Often there's a bit of a knee-jerk reaction to going up.
Look, that's a good question. I don't feel like that would be something that I would need to really consider in getting into federal government and then looking at different policies and where I would stand on that. So definitely would be minimising environmental impacts. I do think there's a complication for people with being able to raise families and be able to live affordably. How that looks is another thing where you have to take into account a lot of factors. So I know that's broad and I know that's vague, but I don't really want to be giving quick responses to complex issues.
You mentioned environment a lot, but I'm interested to hear about your climate change policy and what you plan to do on that huge issue.
Look, I think you can talk about climate change on a number of levels. So what we're looking at is organic farming, regenerative farming, bringing back practices or creating practices that actually don't cause the pollution and the toxic chemical use, removing glyphosates and other pollutants.
I need to talk about net zero. Sorry, I should have been more specific, because we need to get to net zero by 2035, essentially, according to the UN. And
so I'm interested, but the thing that I get, because I'm a massive environmentalist, I care deeply about the environment, genuinely. The thing that I'm concerned about is what this push is of the United Nations, and I would love to be wrong. You can assure you I'd love to be wrong, is that it's going to be genetically modified food, it's going to be over-reliance on chemicals rather than... I was one of those naive people when the pandemic hit where I thought, wow, we're going to realise we're living out of sync with the environment. We need to come back to something that's more in line, which I do consider is regenerative farming. It's organic practices, it's removing chemicals and overuse of chemicals. So unless that's what's being really discussed and talked about, I'm quite concerned. I'd love it to be that's what it is, and not an over-emphasis on more technological solutions to the environment, which I'm concerned are going to have, more spin-off effects.
Thank you very much.